Good day, you're welcome to today's lesson. In this lesson, we'll be having a practical aspect to CSS Basics, and I've created a file already. We will go inside of the file. This is basically a file that talks about a bit intro to CSS, about the basic things that you are supposed to know in CSS. So CSS Basics says, what is CSS? That's the first thing. So CSS is a language for specifying how documents are presented to the users. In this sense, it means how they are styled or laid out and even more. Okay, what is this document that we are talking of? A document is usually a text file structured using a markup language like HTML, SVG, or XML. What is this presenting? Presenting a document to a user means converting it to a form usable by the audience. Browsers like Safari, Firefox, Chrome, Edge, etc. are designed to present documents visually, for example on computer screens, projector, or printer. So let's go here. Okay, so we are in our browser now. You can see everything is basically in the normal syntax or the normal form that we have. Now we'll go into our CSS and we'll have some file created. Okay, so we'll create first.css. I'm just trying to main CSS Basic, the first video I'm making in CSS Basics. Okay, so that's it. So let's go inside and see. Now. Okay, there's some basic styling that they have given me, which I don't like. Let me try and get rid of it. Okay. That's great. Let me get rid of it. Okay. Now, in CSS, what you have to know is the meaning, and we've talked of the meaning in our previous video. Now is the practical aspect. What is what we call a rule set? I think getting a comment is very nice and appropriate here. Okay, let me see if I can get us some comment, and then we are good to go. Okay, nope, don't need this, don't need what this guy has done. Okay, just need this space. Okay, so what are we going to talk of here? Rule set. There's something we call rule set. We have made mention of this fact already in our previous video. I don't have to be going through all this again, but for the sake of understanding, I would just try to brush it up. Okay, so this is what we call a rule set. Now the rule set consists of what we call a selector, in this case h1. All the elements inside of your HTML file are called selectors. Okay, so you don't have to write, for instance, where is it? This, okay, let me bring it here. So maybe I don't have to write h1 here. No, it is not acceptable over here. I will just have to write the name or the character that represent the element, the appropriate element that I want to call. Okay, so we call it what? Selector. So this selector, why is it called a selector? Selector select all what? H1 element, or yes, H1 element inside of your HTML file. So this is what it does. It select all the H1 element inside of your HTML file and add some styling to it. Okay, so let me see if I would be able to add some styling to it. Okay, no, I would be able to add some styling. Then 1, 2. Okay, let me see if I would be able to change the color, or change the color to red. Okay, red. Then I will have to test a line. Test a line is center. You don't have to panic with this at all. They are very easy. They are just here to explain our previous video. Okay, so we have our H1 element. We call the H1 element selector. just after the selector we have an opening curly braces. An opening curly braces. Please, you take key note of that. Between the H1 and the curly braces, you can choose to give it a space, or you can choose to give no space. That one, it is dependent on you, but we always want it to have a space in a way that everything here is easily readable, okay, making reading very easily, because one day you will come back to your file and you would want to understand what these things meant when you were writing them, okay. Maybe if you are unable to read and read it well, you might not know or understand the reason for their being, okay. So it is very important you ensure that your code or your lines are very readable, very, very much readable, okay. So as I said, between the H1 and the opening curly braces, it is your own decision to give it a space or to close it. So I can just bring the curly braces just after my H1, or I can choose to give it a space. Just one space is okay. Just one white space. The space bar is okay to give you one white space, okay. So giving it that, then I can choose to bring the color just after the curly braces. Everything I'm doing here is just to ensure that everything is readable, okay, readable. So I can just bring the color. In this case, we call the property, okay, the property just after the curly braces, and it is acceptable, it will work. But for the sake of readability, that's the reason why I'm sending it to the next line. We want everything to be on its own line, every declaration or whatsoever be on its own line. So after the color, just after the color, we have a value of red, the color red. There are so many colors that we would be able to pass here: orange, yellow, gold, violet, you just name them, they are all acceptable here. And even some color, we have other color values. As we progress with our studies, you'll get to understand them better. For now, you just have to know that the color is a property, and whatever color you pass to it is what a value. The property and its value is what we call a declaration. It constitutes one declaration. Text align is also what a property, and center here is what a value. So if you have done basic typing before, and if you have edited some word before, you should know what I mean by text align. Text align just align your text either to the left, center, or to the right, okay. Or you will have another option of justify, which is also acceptable over here. But in this case, I have given it what the value center, okay. So text align is a property, center here is a value. So this also, text align and center, constitute another declaration, okay. Then after that, I will have what my closing curly braces, So everything here, starting from H1 to the last curly braces, which is the closing curly braces, is what we call a rule set. So the rule set start with what? A selector. It starts with a selector. The most important thing, it starts with a selector. The selector is then followed by what? An opening curly braces. Then you will have properties and its value pairs. Which we call what? Declarations. Between the property and its value, you should use a colon to separate them. So you can see that just after the color, I have a colon over there. The colon separates the property from its value, or the value from its property. Whichever way that you take it, you are good to go, okay. Then after that, you can see that I've given it a space. The space is not that much required or needed. It is, as I said from the beginning, for the sake of readability, to make everything clear, crystal clear, so that each and everyone would be able to read it. That's the reason why I am giving this space. So please, you take key note of this and make sure it is at your fingertips. So between the property and its value, there should be what? A colon to separate them. That's the most important thing. Then you can see a semicolon after the values that I have specified here. whenever you are trying or you are writing a rule set, whenever you are done with one declaration, you should bring a semicolon. So the semicolon in effect is what? A full stop in the normal sentences that we use to show that we have come to the end of that sentence. So if you bring a semicolon, it shows that you have come to the end of that declaration. It shows that you've come to the end of that declaration. Please, it is very important for you to take note of all these. They will help you. Keep them at your fingertips. Whenever you are done with a declaration, you bring a semicolon to indicate its ending. I hope I'm making things clear and understandable. That's great. So you can see just after test align, I have what is a colon, and after the colon I have the value, and after the value I have what? A semicolon. So the semicolon indicate that I have come to the end of this declaration and I'm done. So let's go here. This whole thing that we are seeing here is what? A rule set. The first thing that we saw in there is called a comment. What is comment? Comment is just an explanation of what about that we are doing. We write comment to explain the steps we are taking inside of our code, okay? So that one day or 20 years later, 30 years, 50 years later, even if you are dead and a third party comes and open this file, the third party would be able to know the reason why you created part of the file and the purpose and the functions that they serve. It is very important to comment your code, but since it is the basics now, I wouldn't bother you much on that. When we get to the deeper, or when we dive deeper, I'll begin stressing that point, and we will learn better ways to comment, not just something like this. Something like this is just for style, for aesthetic reasons. That's the reason why we have it here. Okay, so I hope I've been able to explain what a rule set is, what a selector is, what a declaration is, what a property is, and what a value is, and what constitutes a rule set, what constitutes a declaration. They are very key, and I would want you to keep them at your fingertips, please, for your own good and for my good as well. Okay, then let's see. So let's write another rule set. This rule set will apply to our H2 element. If we have H2 element, then this rule set should apply to that. Okay, our H2 element, we would want to give it a color of what? A color of, okay, so you see just after the color is what? A property. So just after the color, and I'm coming to give it a value, I've given it what? A colon. Okay, I've given it a colon. So I said I need a color blue. Okay, so blue, and I'm good to go. Okay, so that's great. Then we also did talk of what? Selecting multiple elements. Okay, let's say I want to select 2 or more elements. How do I do that? Okay, no, I need this guy here rather. Okay, so let's go. Now, in selecting multiple elements, you just write the element name separated by what? Comma. Separated by comma. There are many ways to do this. So let's say if I select my H1 element along with my H3, so H3 elements, then maybe a P element, and I want to give them very nice font size, say for the sake of readability. Okay, and then let me give them some font size. Font size. Okay, yes, we are good to go, and maybe I'll give them 25 pixels. I hope by now you know what these terms means. And maybe I want to give them font family. the font family, just specify the font to be used. Okay, the font family specify the font to be used. So I will use serif, and I think I'm okay here. Okay, so these are what? Okay, so how many rule set do we have here? We have 1, 2, 3. We have 3 rule sets. How many declarations does the first rule set contain? So the first rule set contains 1, 2 declarations. Okay, let me be highlighting them, maybe 4. Okay, so I hope you can see where the cursor is placing, is blinking. Where the cursor is blinking is our first declaration. The next one is the second declaration. Okay, so we've come to the end of the first rule set. Going to the second rule set, we have just a declaration, and going to the third rule set, we have what? How many declarations? 2. You can have as many declarations as you want to have. Okay, that's great. So let's go back to our HTML file, link it, and let's have the effect over there. So HTML, then first.html, then we'll come here. We have stressed this point. I've done this several times with you. So you come here and you link it using the link element. The link element. So let me see. Okay. I'll need this guy 1, 2. Then I'm out. Go to styles. Then okay, styles. I'm in. Then I'll go to first. First.css. Think I'm right. Okay, then maybe real should come. Then I'll have my style sheet straight away. Okay, maybe I'm good to go. So we are expecting some changes in our HTML file now. That's great. So you can see CSS Basics is in red and is at the center. This is the first declaration. In the first declaration, we passed the color property to this, as well as the text align property, and we gave each of them a value, and they are working here. In the second declaration, we just called our h2 element and we passed somewhat value. So we just changed the color, nothing more, nothing less. So that's what we did over here. And you could see that the font has changed. We made mention of the fact that, okay, I think in our third rule set, we changed the font of our paragraph element. Okay, let me come here. Our paragraph element and our H1, H2 element. Okay, H1 and H2 elements. So this is how far we've gotten to. I hope this lesson is very clear and understanding. Thank you for watching. I would advise you to keep learning. It is the only thing I always say you can do with your lifetime. There is nothing more, nothing less. Now, I will advise you to tell your friends about Rose Consult. As you enjoy here, as you learn here, let them also learn and enjoy. Because if we are all well to do, no one will depend on the other. If you get a kobo, it is your own. You wouldn't give a penny to a friend, okay? Because the friend has something dependable he or she is also doing that's funding him or her. Please keep sharing the link. This is the reason why Rose Consult has come, just to help youth like you and myself to have something that we can depend on. Something formidable, of course, not just anything. Thank you for watching. Stay blessed, stay tuned. In our next video, we'll be having an interesting lesson, and I'm not sure you are going to miss it for anything. Thank you for now. Stay blessed. Bye bye.